Each webinar has been unique, and the presenters have offered invaluable information for administrators, directors of coaching, board of directors, and soccer enthusiasts looking to improve opportunities for youth players. Through the Club Standards Project, and the NSCAA is able to provide youth soccer clubs in the United States of America, Canada, and other countries around the world with access to best practice in youth soccer. The NSCAA is not vested in any particular model, approach, or philosophy, and to that end we can provide an impartial and objective opinion on the club's current performance. Most importantly, we can help clubs to improve short and long-term opportunities for players and coaches by recommending innovative ideas proven to work by other clubs. The Club Standards Project is an assessment model originally created in 2008 from an assessment process used to evaluate physical education curriculum in schools. Unlike standards projects in other countries, we have not predetermined what best practice is. We believe that that approach would limit the impact we can have on youth programs. Instead, we recognize that every club operates with a level of autonomy and direction, and the good practice in one situation may not necessarily work in another. To this end, our focus is to identify examples of successful execution in our three primary areas of interest: player development, coaching, and administration. As purveyors of best practice, our role is to pass on our experience to help clubs be successful over the long term. Whether the organization is large or small, professional or volunteer, recreational or elite, a town program or a regional program, the likelihood is that our highly experienced and trained consultants will be able to identify examples of best practice that can raise the performance level of your club. With over 100 assessments completed and with 4 to 5 new assessments per month, the range and the depth of our research evidence is significant. Our responsibility is not to create best practice, but to identify when it is occurring and recommend if and when it is appropriate for a club to implement. There are 3 levels of assessment. The preliminary level is a free online survey with 15 questions focusing on our 3 primary areas of focus. Recently, we introduced a new intermediate level assessment that includes 10 hours of consultant time in evaluating a club's performance and providing the organizations with best practice recommendations that relate to our 3 or 4 different areas of functionality. The cost of that level is $500 and includes a provisional score and a summary report. The advanced level is a comprehensive review of the club's performance. There are 3 primary features of this level. The first is a 2-day site visit by a consultant. The second, a comprehensive report with over 100 pages of recommendations and review. And the third is the official designation by the NSCAA as a gold, silver, or bronze club. Undoubtedly, we could spend hours arguing about the definition of a successful youth club. So to provide clarity, here's some of the outcomes we feel are associated with successful clubs. The first is retaining at least 70% of players. The second is retaining a high percentage of coaches. The third, maintaining or growing the organization's membership. The fourth, performing consistently to the organization's mission, aims, and outcomes. The fifth is consistently achieving financial viability. The sixth, meeting or exceeding the expectations of the members. And the seventh is graduating highly committed and skilled players and coaches to higher levels within the program and new opportunities. The title of this presentation is the 20 Common Characteristics of Successful Youth Clubs, and at the time of creating the workshop title we did have 20 examples. But in the last 6 months we've added 2 more characteristics, and we anticipate adding more over the next year as we complete more intermediate and advanced assessments. So that I am able to provide some substance to the presentation, today I will address the first 10 characteristics, leaving the other 12 to the second webinar presentation I have scheduled for Monday, the 1st of April at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you are unable to attend that session, we will record the webinar and make it available to you through our LinkedIn account. And more information will be shared with you at the end of the presentation. Just as a reminder, please send in your questions and I will answer those at the end. Successful clubs maximize opportunities for players and coaches to learn. Player development is always at the forefront of decision making. For example, if the organization hires professional staff, groups and teams should be rotated in and out of the location where the staff are located. It is highly inefficient to have professional staff move from one practice location to another during the same evening. Practice to game ratios are another consideration, and as a rule of thumb, pre-travel players should be training at least at a 4-to-1 ratio of practices to games. That is not to suggest that a 4-year-old must train 5 times a week, but that the total time over the week is organized in the favor of training. For example, if players attend 2 50-minute sessions per week, only 20 minutes of the 100-minute sessions should be used for games or matches. To receive maximum benefit for all players in the club, it is important for the senior coaches to have influence over players and coaches at all levels. Equitable distribution of DOC time is a significant issue we see in our assessments. Successful clubs regard themselves as educational institutions rather than as a loose collection of sports teams, and to that end implement a robust education framework. On your screen you will see an educational framework that is underpinned by a curriculum and supports the progression of players between stages of development. In this model, the age of the player is not as important as their natural development progress along the player development continuum. These clubs establish processes and systems that are followed by the coaches, and if done, will lead to success amongst all players. If you sit down and seriously contemplate all the things your players need to know and master to fulfill their potential, you will soon discover that there are not enough hours available in a year to teach everything. So you must prioritize your time to make sure that you're teaching the most important things when they should be learned, and that you're teaching concepts in an appropriate and effective order. That's why it's so important to have processes and systems. This is why having a curriculum document is so important. Otherwise, you are leaving the teaching and learning process entirely up to chance, and chances are that not much learning will actually occur as a result. Successful soccer clubs appreciate that most players will peak in performance in their mid to late 20s. Unfortunately, in the United States in particular, the vast majority of youth players will never reach their full potential, as they will drop out from this sport well before their mid to late 20s. Many of you will be familiar with the 10,000-hour rule described most recently by Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers. Translated to youth soccer, the principle is the same. Highly skilled performers will need to spend thousands of hours working with the ball and over many years to become highly competent. It is the accumulation of hours that is important to consider when organizing your programs. With young players, it is valuable to have them touch the ball year-round and not to cram a year's worth of training into sessions in one season. Providing an opportunity for children to participate in multiple sports and activities is critical, and 2 sessions a week for 30 weeks a year will certainly provide players enough exposure to progress at a decent rate. For those of us experiencing, for those of us who are experienced the 4 seasons, indoor futsal training becomes invaluable during the winter months. As previously mentioned on the second slide regarding the educational framework, successful youth clubs appreciate that development occurs on a continuum that is not necessarily dictated by the age of a player. This then begs a question why so many clubs and so many leagues are organized around an inflexible age groups. Many years ago, US Soccer produced a best practices guide that included contributions from a number of highly respected educators and coaches. In this document, the authors referred to the importance of players playing with others of similar ability and not restricting players to play with similarly aged players. This was best practice 10 years ago, and it remains best practice today. Unfortunately, in many states and competitions around the country, due to the influence of professional educators and directors of coaching, the rules that prohibit players moving freely within the club are starting to slowly erode. Players in successful clubs join a club and not a team. The club has the freedom to move players for practice and games without too many administrative concerns. We have evaluated several clubs that offer a club pass program, and although the programs differ from one club and region to the other, the basic premise is to allow the clubs the freedom to move players and maximize development. Another example includes offering occasional pool training sessions where players from A, B, and C teams train together with the coaches of these teams. This is a great way to see how players are progressing against their peers and also to share the wealth of coaching experience. One can hopefully see a common theme developing in our research. That is that successful clubs always focus on what's best for the individual and understand that individual development will lead to team and club success. This is particularly the case with young players where the value of participating in games and team environment are negligible. Before moving on to passing and receiving, it is vital that players develop competence in dribbling and ball mastery. This is why educators insist on one ball for every child for 90% of the training session, with players up to the age of 9. If we are truly concerned about the development of players, we must do our best to engage every player and establish content that challenges individuals. Working in mixed ability groups and having to activate the best players of hugely disparate abilities is a significant challenge for even the experienced coach. Moving players into groups of similar abilities will greatly increase the chances of success for players and coaches. If a player is ready to move up an age group based on their proficiency, then it is important for the club to promote that player forward and not stand in the way because of the success of the team that they are leaving. Providing homework activities on a regular basis that can be performed by a player in the yard with a ball should be encouraged at all age groups. Success on the field can often be distilled down to some key variables, including financial strength, reputation and brand, owning or controlling facilities, and strong grassroots participation. In New England and many East Coast towns, we see a soccer program in almost every town, each one providing local opportunities for players wishing to participate with their school friends. As we move west and south, we see clubs operating on a regional basis, with significantly more children participating in the programs at all levels. Size of the player pool greatly affects an organization's ability to provide appropriate and relevant experiences at all levels of ability. The larger the player pool, the more variety and opportunity the organization can provide to the members. The more members, the more money available to invest in player development. I believe strongly and have seen firsthand the value of collaboration between organizations that may be regarded as rivals. No doubt, there are many obstacles to overcome, but the benefit to player and coaches of collaboration will be significant. Although I have no scientific evidence at this stage to support this claim, my experience suggests that for a club to field 2 strong boys and girls teams at each age group between the ages of 14 and 18, it must have at least 3 to 4 times as many players participating in the age group at the transition points between recreation and competitive program, which typically is around the age of 8 or 9. These proportions are 5 to 6 times as many players participating at the entry point to soccer, age 4 to 5. This formula thus suggests that to fill 2 U15 rosters of 18 boys and 18 girls in a club, they will need in the region of 180 players, boys and girls, at the entry point to travel soccer, and in the region, 180 boys and girls at the age groups of 4 and 5, and 100 boys and girls at the age of 9. Successful clubs take the responsibility for the majority of coach development and support in-house coaching education programs with supplemental offerings from organizations such as USSF and NSCAA. Utilizing technology to deliver coaching education content provides a club with the greater likelihood of coach participation. In this day and age, it is unreasonable to expect that coaches, both volunteers and professionals, will want to attend regular in-person workshops with practical sessions. While there are certainly significant values in meeting with coaches face-to-face in a large group setting, the use of video, e-learning, and webinars are a great way to minimize the time for busy people. For organizations that rely significantly on volunteer support, creating a mentorship program is an excellent way to provide novice coaches with assistance. The more support a club provides the coaches and the more innovative ways that the club can deliver important education content, the more likely that the club will recruit individuals willing to volunteer their time. Then there are many different directive coaching models employed by clubs around the country. In some organizations, there are multiple individuals that perform the directive coaching role, and thus the task of reaching all constituents is not the sole responsibility of one individual. In other situations, the directive coaching may be the only person with oversight of on-field performance of the club, or the DOC may be purely the administrative position. Whatever the model, successful organizations assign responsibility to one or more individuals to oversee the performance of players and coaches in the entire program. The DOC does not have team responsibilities that will detract from their ability to reach all age groups, and more often than not is the person that is most recognized by the members as the coaching authority. The DOC should certainly be responsible for coach development, including mentoring coaches on the field with their teams, evaluating coach performance, and helping coaches select the right content for their training sessions. The DOC will typically be the chief educator and will lead or facilitate formal coaching education sessions. Before I get to the last two common characteristics, just a reminder, please send in your questions and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. During a typical advanced assessment visit, our clients will spend a couple of evenings, consultants will spend a couple of evenings observing coaches working with their players. Most importantly, we will find 10 minutes to speak with the coaches before or after the session with a view to determine their level of understanding and buy-in with the club's philosophy. More often than not, these discussions reveal to the consultant the level of success or failure a club has in replicating the experience for players and coaches. Coaches that are familiar with the philosophy are more likely to make decisions that promote the values and mission of the club. Those coaches less engaged are more likely to feel left to their own devices and to make decisions for and on behalf of their team. Engaging the coaches in a common philosophy is critical, and successful clubs go above and beyond to ensure coaches understand the needs and requirements of the club. An in-house coaching education program and regular coaches meetings will go a long way to establishing commonly held beliefs and good practice. As previously mentioned, facilities often play an important role in the successes and failures of youth clubs. Sometimes issues with access and ownership limit the availability of the fields for practices and games. In some situations, clubs are unable to offer a spring or fall season based on field availability. In these cases, player development is significantly affected and players may seek other sports or other clubs as alternatives. Securing access to fields and indoor and outdoor fields must be a primary objective for any youth program and should be reviewed on a seasonal basis. Field utilization is a typical issue during our site visits. More often than not, coaches will train on a field marked for gameplay, and this will lead to overuse and damage to the field. Limiting the number of lined fields and instead providing open space for practice will enable a coach to set up equipment in different areas of the field and will allow them and the club to maximize field use. Successful clubs provide centralized training locations and schedule teams at those locations when the players and the coaches can receive support from experienced staff. And this is a major issue in many of the clubs we've evaluated in the Midwest, in the South, and in the West. In addition to the significant liability and the risk management headache, having teams and coaches spread all over town provides a nightmare for clubs wanting to establish consistency in coaching and in opportunity.